Welcome to Herbalism Uncensored, the podcast where we dig deep into the world of herbalism and natural healing. I'm Alicia.
And I'm Lila. We're two clinical herbalists who recognize the need for honest and authentic conversations about the state of natural healing today. As practitioners, we feel called to have uncensored discussions about why people aren't finding relief and what to do about it.
If you're frustrated by lack of results, overwhelmed by conflicting advice online, disillusioned by the commercialization of wellness, or simply passionate about natural healing, you're in the right place.
This podcast is our way of cutting through the noise, busting myths, and challenging marketing gimmicks, all while inspiring real, lasting results for professionals and individuals alike.
We're gonna get real, calling out what works, what doesn't, and why. Our goal is to equip you with the tools to take charge of your health. We're here to help everyone rethink clinical success and achieve better outcomes.
We're honored to be here and feel privileged to contribute to the realistic and functional growth of our professions, one where they effectively support all people on their journeys to feel better.
This is Herbalism Uncensored,
where together we're nurturing the future of natural healing. The contents of this podcast are for informational purposes only and are not intended to be a substitute in any way for professional medical advice, treatment, or diagnosis. It is important that you always seek the advice of your physician or other licensed healthcare provider with any questions or concerns you may have regarding a medical condition. Today, we are talking about 5 reasons that you're not seeing results with your alternative medicine, with your herbs, with your supplements, with all these natural things you hear can do all this cool stuff, but you haven't seen it for yourself. I know I encounter many people who have said they've tried herbs and supplements and alternative methods and they didn't fix their problems. And today we're talking about why. Alicia, I want to know, do you see this issue in your practice too?
I do, absolutely. I'm just going to give a short answer to the question. It's the wrong herb, the wrong supplement, the wrong dose, or the wrong preparation. And the thing that comes to mind is a woman who had horrible pins and needles in her feet all the time. And I just gave her some off the cuff advice and said, take Go to Cola, get Go to Cola. That will take care of it. It's fantastic for those kinds of issues. And we talked, it was probably a month or two later, and she said, no, I bought the supplement. It was really expensive. It didn't work at all. And I said, well, what did you get? And she got a glycerite tincture, which is one of those little apothecary bottles. It's usually a 1 ounce to a 4 ounce bottle with a little dropper on top. And I don't know if the constituents of Go to Cola are soluble in glycerin, but I absolutely know. So that's questionable, but I absolutely know that she was taking way too low of a dose. So we talked about making tea and making tea at the correct dose. And she's now amazed, and she's a big believer in her Go to Cola tea and never misses it because she loves that her feet don't hurt anymore.
And that's such a good example of we have the right herb. We hear this herb does this thing and we take it and it doesn't work. And a lot of us don't know enough to know that it's the wrong preparation or the wrong amount. And we trust what we see in the grocery stores. So we don't know better. So I think this is such a great jumping off point for our talk today. And you brought up the 5 really great key points. And let's start with number 1. Let's dive in. People don't know what to expect with the herbs they're taking. And I think that's like the entry point for this. We don't know what they should be doing.
Yeah, I mean, what do you expect? And people's expectations are different. Like we talked about your expectations of herbs, right? Versus the average person's expectations of herbs. Like tell me, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the average expectation of an herb used medicinally.
Yeah. So I'm just going to put myself in the shoes of the average consumer. Let's say I have a headache. I expect to be able to go to the store, get a capsule, a bottle of Willow's bark, take a capsule, and my headache would be gone. Or I think a lot of people compare herbs to an alternative to medication, which they are, but they expect them to work the same way medications work. So maybe with the neuropathy you mentioned, I have neuropathy. I take this Go to Cola tincture, my neuropathy is still there. I would have to assume that a lot of people expect it to work pretty instantaneously most of the time.
Yeah, they're expected to work like a gabapentin, where you take one pill and your pain goes away until the pill wears off, and then you take another pill and the pain goes away pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's twofold though, because there are some herbs that can work acutely, but a lot of things do take some time, right? Can you speak into that a bit?
Well, I mean, herbs are mild. Herbs are mild. Drugs are strong. When you take something that's been synthesized in a lab to do one specific thing, I think the thing that comes to mind is like blood pressure medication. Your blood pressure's through the roof. You take a pill, it slams your blood pressure down within minutes. But if you're going to use herbs and supplements and diet to work on your blood pressure, what you're going to see is a gradual decrease in blood pressure over the course of weeks because herbs are mild. Which is why they have less side effects because they're mild. They're food-like.
And you bring up a good point that medications are almost like they're bullying your body into doing something, and the herbs don't necessarily work that way. Like a medication is coming in and telling your body to do this very specific thing that your body isn't doing for whatever reason, and it's instant. Whereas herbs come in and I mean, you can use herbs in a little bit different way, right? Like we can use herbs to bring down blood pressure pretty dramatically, but for the most part, we want to use herbs to harmonize and bring your body back into balance. And that doesn't happen instantaneously, right?
No, because it's more about supporting the body's natural processes. It's not about using the plant or using the supplement to kickstart something. It's about supporting something. Does that make sense? A little
I,
different.
yeah, it totally makes sense to me. So, and I think herbs are gentle, but they're still dramatic and effective in a really cool way. So, I think that when you are using herbs and supplements, like you should notice results if you are using herbs and supplements for an amount of time. Would you agree?
Well, yeah, if you're taking the right herb and the right supplement at the right amount.
Yes. It just might not happen overnight.
Yeah, I mean, not overnight. Well, we talked about this. We talked a little bit about. I do. I want you to talk on this on how you grew up a little bit differently than say I did. Like I grew up, and when I got sick, I went to the doctor. We took medication. If I was running a fever, I got an antibiotic, and the next day the fever was gone. And so I think that that's what most people expect is I have this thing that's uncomfortable, that's bothering me. I'm going to take this pill within 24 hours. It's going to be gone. And tell me what happened when you were sick growing up.
Oh, my dad we'd go to the health food store and spend hours in the the supplement aisles looking at all the things, and we had a medicine cabinet at home that was all just like herbs and supplements, and my dad would make you take a bunch of stuff. It was codfish oil straight on the spoon. It was disgusting juices. It was supplements. It was, the essential oil diffusers going. You're rubbing things on your chest. Like you were doing all the things. And you felt better in a few days, but the expectation was like it went away instantly. Like it was you're going to be sick for a couple days and you're going to gradually get better and that's how it goes and you keep taking the things until you're better. Like yeah, we didn't see doctors, so it was very normal to me to let it take time. Like that was our experience, you know. We didn't curb fevers or anything like that. We wrote it out while supporting it naturally.
Yeah, so you felt so you when once you started, this is what I hear is that once you started to implement solutions, it was still going to be several days before you got better.
Yes, and, the goal is you wanna see it going in the right direction, right? That's how you know it's working. So when you gradually improve, you're going in the right direction, the things you're doing are working. And if you weren't going in the right direction, you do different things. That was kinda how we worked.
I think that's so cool.
It was I when I was a kid, I just felt like I was taking a lot of really nasty things, but now I have a great appreciation for it. I really do. I remember when I was sick, my dad would get, like, carrot juice and boiled ginger in it. Which doesn't sound like it'd be gross, but, like, to me as a child, it was, like, the most disgusting thing ever, and we'd have to drink it, like, by the bowl, and, oh, it was a lot.
Now
Yep.
we're talking about grandpa herbalism.
Gran grandpa herbalism. Exactly. But, yeah, I didn't grow up as the average, so I think I've always had a more standing time of how herbs work, right? Even when I'm working with my menstrual cycle or my mood or my depression or my anxiety, like, I knew I would never be able to take a supplement and it goes away. That's just not how the body works. That's not how we find sustainable healing that truly lasts.
Yeah. So I think that's the issue is like that people aren't getting the results that they expect and they don't really know what to expect. Like, how do you know the difference? How do you know if it's working? Because it's not going to work. If you're like the average American, it's probably not going to work the way everything else that you've taken for most of your life works.
Exactly. And when people I know you've mentioned to me that people come to you and they come to me as well with a long list of supplements, right? They're taking 20 things. They're taking their magnesium and the CoQ10 and turmeric and milk thistle and a B vitamin. Like they're taking so many things and they're still dealing with this chronic issue and they're not seeing improvement. And it's I'm always like, "Okay, like, you should see some you should get a return on your investment. You're investing in your health, you're taking the herbs and supplements and things, like, you should feel better. You shouldn't just take the things and not feel any changes." Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that if you're I mean, sometimes it takes, I think on a something slow acting, something really slow acting, it might take a month or 6 weeks before you have noticeable results that you can feel in your body. But if you've been taking a bunch of stuff for a long list of supplements and vitamins and herbs for 6 months and you're not feeling better, then you're taking the wrong stuff.
Oh, people come to me on the same supplemental regimen for 10 years. And, "Why are you taking all these things?" "Well, to fix these health issues I'm coming to you for." And, at some point, you're like, "Well, you've been doing the same thing for 10 years, like, that's probably not working."
10 years. Wow.
Not making that up.
Okay. Okay. So why is it not working? You got 6 months, 10 years down the line, things that you aren't feeling better. Why would that be? So the first thing that we've got is maybe you're just using the wrong thing.
Yes. That's extremely common. You're using and this is true for supplements and herbs, right? Like, you're using the wrong thing. I see herbalists recommend using yarrow for acne, and that's probably not the best herb choice for acne. And so we just have these, like, weird I call it, like, this for that solutions where people have learned that this herb is good for this specific ailment, but it's been learned through, like, misinformation or misunderstanding, and so we have people recommending things that aren't necessarily going to fix or resolve these issues people are facing, like yarrow for acne.
Well, and maybe the person who's recommending Yarrow for acne had acne and took Yarrow and it worked for them. And the thing with herbs is that they're individual. They're not one size fits all. We're leaving out the idea that each person is different. We talked about things being qualitative, and we don't know what's causing the acne. Is the acne due to an overworked liver? Is the acne due to a hormone imbalance? Is the acne due to a hormone imbalance because of an overworked liver that can't process all the hormones? Or
Mhm,
is it caused from a reaction to something that someone's eating or an environmental toxin? And is the person what kind of person has the acne? Is
mhm.
this a really cold person or a really hot person? Is this a really dry person or a really wet person? And so there are several different herbs that could be used for acne. And I might give I might recommend a different one to a different person. I might have acne and need to take one thing. And if you had acne, that wouldn't work for you and you would need something different.
Yeah, totally agree, which kinda reminds me of my own menstrual issues, right? Like, there's an herb that we keep trying to use to start my periods, right? We keep using Dong Quai, and it doesn't work for me, right? And so I've had to accept that this herb isn't working for my situation, and I can go read 100 things on the internet that say this should do this should correct this, but at the end of the day, it is the wrong choice for me because of all the other factors that you just mentioned. And so when we talk about using the wrong herb, I think it's twofold. It's we're not considering the individual and the specifics of their case, and then also just like I think you have to use multiple herbs to really get effects depending on what you're doing, right? Like, a lot of times it's not just like one herb fixes one thing. Would you agree with that sentiment?
Absolutely. I mean, well, you're a fantastic example if I can share a little bit about your case.
Go for it.
With your permission. When you first had an appointment with me, you had not had a cycle in 9 months. And I mean, that's a complex issue. There are other things going on there. You are 29 years old?
I'm 30.
You're 30. Oh, she's a big girl. She's a big girl. But 30 years old, you should be cycling with the moon. You should be
Agreed.
cycling every 29 and a half days. And for 9 months to go by, there are other things going on there. This is a complex issue. And we nailed it, didn't we?
I've been cycling with the moon.
Here we are. And it took about what, like 6 months to nail it. I mean, we had gradual results.
I mean, I would say it was even quicker. I mean, we got my period back within a month, and then within a few months, like, I feel like it's been pretty normalized. So, yeah, but yeah, it's been fine tuning over, 4, 5, 6 months.
Yeah, and so I mean, we hit the nail on the head. We fine tuned it, but we used several different herbs. And the tengqi or the dong quai, depending on like where you're from, what you call it, is something that is. I mean, I was surprised that it didn't work. It is a catch-all. It's known to increase blood flow to the uterus. It is a blood mover. It's like the number one blood mover, female tonic in traditional Chinese medicine. Most people who have amenorrhea take some tengqi or some dongquai, and they immediately it kicks in their bleeding days. But you're an individual. It's not going to work for every single person, even though I can open up. I mean, not just I don't just see that on Instagram. I could open up 15 different textbooks right now that will tell me that that will work, but it's not going to work with everybody.
Exactly, and so imagine if I wasn't working with a practitioner and I read these herb books, I looked on the internet and I said, "Don Quai should do this." If I went and tried it and did that and experienced that on my own, my first instinct would be like, "Oh, herbs don't work," That's probably where I would turn. This doesn't work because I wouldn't have known all the nuances that go into picking the right herbs for the right situation, which really is an art and a science. It's complex and it's such an important piece to getting clinical results with the medicines that we're talking about.
Absolutely. So I mean, you can use the wrong herb. And what if you're using the right herb, but you're just not taking enough?
See it all the time. People are on the right things, but their dose is so low that it's really not going to be effective. I saw just before we jumped on this, I saw somebody talking about normalizing and correcting their progesterone levels. They were trying to increase their progesterone levels, and they were taking 250 milligrams of Vitex or chaseberry.
Okay.
250 milligrams. So if people watch this video and they go out and they take 250 milligrams of this herb, do you
Is
think
that
they're gonna see
even
results?
is that even one whole berry? I'm sorry. Like how many berries is it? Is it's a half a berry?
Take your berry and cut it in half and
I'm sorry. So I work with, you know, I've got a scale and I'm weighing things and I'm just thinking like how many berries would I put in this scale to take it 250 milligrams? This is nobody's gonna find this funny but us. Okay, so she was taking 250 milligrams of chaseberry
mhm.
and not getting results.
Well, I don't know, she was selling the chaseberry, so I
Okay,
can't
selling it for what?
for increasing people's progesterone levels.
Okay.
So now if people go and take that, do you think they're gonna see differences in their hormones?
No, I mean I don't think so. I don't
I
think
don't
so.
think so either. That is a I like what you say, it's a non-therapeutic dose.
It's a non-therapeutic dose. That's a very wimpy dose.
Yeah, or how about maybe something more familiar for people, magnesium?
Ooh, one day we're gonna do a whole episode on magnesium labeling and loading doses of magnesium. So,
Yeah,
magnesium, there's like so much that we could get into there, but I try to get people to take up to 1,200 milligrams of magnesium, which is like, no, it just disclaimer, if anybody listens to this and goes to the grocery store and goes home and takes 1,200 milligrams of magnesium, they will not be happy the next day. Magnesium can pull water into your colon, give you loose stool. It's not a fun time if you just jump into 1,200 milligrams of magnesium. It's something that we would work up to over time. But yeah, there's a lot of people who are taking 140 magnesium. Everybody's magnesium deficient. Everybody is. If you're not eating 8 cups of homegrown green vegetables every day, then you are most likely magnesium deficient. And the way that you get tested for magnesium when you go and get lab work is misleading. I won't get deep into that. Like I said, it's a whole nother episode. but you can have the correct magnesium levels in your blood and be deficient in your tissues. If you when you have all kinds of problems when you don't have enough magnesium, what I've seen is that every single person who has issues with sleep or with pain, and oftentimes with mood as well, when they get their magnesium levels up and take large doses of magnesium, they feel better. And there's a lot of talk about magnesium out there, especially what's the one that's really popular right now is magnesium threonate.
Mhm.
And it doesn't really matter what kind you take. They all have magnesium glycinate, citrate, threonate. They all have magnesium in them. And
Yep.
your body can separate the magnesium from it just fine, but you're not going to see results when you're taking 140 milligrams of magnesium a day.
Right, like, if you go to the store and you buy a bottle of magnesium and you take 1 capsule a day, you are not going to see the results that you could with magnesium. And I think that's what a lot of people do. They go buy a bottle of something and they follow the manufacturer's instructions, right? Which makes sense. You want, you're buying this product. You would trust the person who's making the product to tell you how to take it. But really, I think there's a lot being left on the table, and people aren't seeing the results they need because the dosing's so low. Which brings us to another point when we're talking about incorrect dosages, is that most herbs and supplements that you buy in the grocery store, I say most, I could probably confidently say all, they have incorrect dosing on them. They have very minuscule dosing that isn't going to get you the results you need.
You say minuscule dosing?
I did say minuscule dosing. They have tiny, tiny doses. If you go buy a bottle of magnesium, right, like it's not going to be any, they're not going to recommend anywhere near 1200 milligrams.
Yeah, and that's well, I'm not gonna say anything else about magnesium because they just changed the laws of the labeling laws. We were talking recently in one of our study sessions with our colleagues about standardized extracts and
Hmm.
asking what are they standardized to? So you have to be able to really read the labels and to figure out how much is in any kind of an extract, how much of what is in an extract, and then how much magnesium is in that tablet of magnesium, because the front of the bottle might say magnesium 400 milligrams, and you turn it over to the back and actually there's 400 milligrams in two tablets, not one. So you might think that you're taking the correct amount and you're only taking half. It's just it's I think that it can be really stressful to go to the natural health section of the grocery store or to the vitamin store and try to figure out what it is that you need. And then, as you say, like the instructions on the bottle, I don't think that the people who are selling these supplements or these herbs are malicious or greedy. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt because you can buy at your local health food store, or your local health food section in your local grocery store are here and available. And that's great, right? Because a lot of the stuff that we use, we have to order online and we have to wait for it to ship. But we can go and get these things from the grocery store, and there's labeling on the back of the bottle or on the back of the jar. And the labeling is there for a little bit of direction, but it's not really there for education. And a lot of times, these are not therapeutic doses. And therapeutic, like, how do we define therapeutic dose? This is the amount that you would need to take to get clinical results, to have a therapeutic effect. And I don't think, well, I think that some companies maybe just don't care about whether or not you're getting results because they're in the business of selling product. And if you believe that the product's going to give you results, but it's not, then you will buy more product. But I really believe that most of these companies are doing a service to the public by making these things available. And they have to consider what kind of information they put on the bottle, because if you go taking, I don't know, lobelia is one of the things that comes to mind, right? Lobelia is emetic, which means that it will make you nauseous if you take too much of it. Now, I've worked my way up to higher doses of lobelia, but if they put a big therapeutic dose on the back of the bottle of lobelia, then people are going around throwing up all over the place, and it's a liability issue for their company. These labels are not for educational purposes.
And you bring up a really good point of, so these companies, they're here to put out a product and make this product available, but for them to make sure that that product was being used in a way that got results goes beyond their scope because there's no labeling that you can put on the bottle that really accounts for everybody, right? Like when we use herbs and supplements, we are unique. We're individuals. We're dealing with different things. We have different digestive capabilities, different liver functions. All these factors really determine how this herb is going to work in our bodies. And the manufacturers can't account for this on the back of a label, right? Like, Alicia, I probably weigh twice what you weigh. I am like a foot taller than you.
No, you
And
weigh twice what I weigh.
I'm tall. But if we were going to go to the store and buy the same herb, it would have the same 2 capsule dosing on it, right? It wouldn't take into account that we have different physiologies, and I think that that's just beyond the scope of what the manufacturers can do, right?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, and these therapeutic dosing is necessary to get noticeable results. And then, we could there's no blanket therapeutic dose because for something that's really strong in the way of herbs and supplements, 1,000 milligrams or 1 gram or 2,000 milligrams could be a therapeutic dose. Whereas other items might require much higher doses, maybe 30 times that much for it to be a therapeutic dose. We talk about the tea aisle, right? And the box of teas. One box of tea with all of its tea bags in it contains about 15 grams of plant matter. And so for some things, that whole box is a therapeutic dose. For other things, half the box is a therapeutic dose. Other things, you need two whole boxes to
Yep.
really get a therapeutic effect. And then you're not going to get it after just doing it once, except for with a few things that we talk about that can be used acutely.
Well, I think this brings in one of the biggest differences between taking like a medication from your doctor and herbal medicine is the dosing isn't as rigid and clear. It's not you take one capsule, your issue is going to be fixed and that's enough for you. With herbs, you really have to find the dose that works for you. And this is really uncommon and foreign to a lot of people who grew up in our Western medical model. But there are things that we say, we dose into effectiveness. And so we have people bring in this herb or supplement and they take it and increase the dose until they find the dose that gives us the action we want. And again, you can't necessarily put that on a bottle and it's really complicated and foreign to people, but that is part of how you do correct dosing for herbal medicine. And it's unknown to a lot of people. I know I have a lot of clients that I've been putting on things and I need them to get their dose up and it's like it's something I'm constantly re-educating on.
You're making me think, what was it? I cannot remember what it was, but it was years ago. It was one of my earliest clients. And I said dose to tolerance. I can't remember what the plant was, but it was a tea. I remember it was a tea and it was dose to tolerance. And so when I say dose to tolerance, I mean, take as much as you can before you get side effects. So you start low, you gradually increase the dose until you experience a side effect. And the side effect is, I'll tell people what side effect to look for. The side effect is going to be nausea or upset stomach or a headache. And then once you get, or you get too hot, you feel your face getting warm. And once you get that side effect, you know what that dose is and you back it up a little bit. And that's your dose. So you're just taking as much as you possibly can without experiencing uncomfortable side effects. That's what I mean when I say dose to tolerance. And she came back. This was before I was coaching. I was just seeing her once a month and doing an assessment and making adjustments once a month. She came back 30 days later and she had not gotten anywhere near the therapeutic dose because she said, I just couldn't tolerate it. It tasted too nasty. And so I took as much as I could tolerate.
It's like that one half berry is as much as they can tolerate.
Well, I mean, I think it was like a third of what I was expecting a therapeutic dose to be, and and she didn't get any results because she wasn't taking enough. Now, if she had taken that 1/3 dose over time continuously, she would have, I bet, eventually gotten results, which just would have taken her 3 times as long because she was only taking a third of the therapeutic dose. So
Yeah.
when you take less, You can still get results. It just takes exponentially longer.
Which kind of ties back to knowing what to expect, right? Like, depending on what herb you're taking, how long you're taking the herb, what you're expecting it to do, all these things come into the picture, and herbalism really is just a lot more complicated than reading a book, finding an herb is good for this, and going into your grocery store and getting that herb. There's a lot of nuance that goes into successfully using herbal medicine.
Yeah, and it's highly individualized. It's highly individualized. It varies from person to person, and it varies from herb to herb because I could get really good at knowing what to expect from one plant or from one supplement, but then I don't know what to expect from another plant or another supplement. There's a big difference between vitamin D and vitamin C, and there's a big difference between Tangqi and kava.
Yes.
She goes, yes.
Yes.
Or I mean, or let me just put things that are in the same category. There's a big difference between Tenqui and Shatavari. These are
Mhm.
both female tonics. These are both things that we would use for things like PMS, fertility, menstrual cycle regulation, and and hormone balance. They help to support the body's hormonal imbalances or hormonal balance. Yeah, they help to correct the imbalances by supporting the body's ability to balance hormones. But yeah, I mean, they're so different, and they work by different mechanisms and work differently in your body and work differently in my body than they do in your body.
Yeah, what I'm picking up on is there's just a lot of nuance when it goes into doing these things that I think we've been kind of glossing over, and so we do these things expecting them to do or act one way, but when we miss all this nuance, we really miss the opportunity to employ these things effectively. So we know that we have to have the right expectations of what we're taking, what it's going to do. We know we have to use the right herb for the right person in the right situation at the correct dosage. Okay, so we have all these things dialed in. There's another thing we need to tackle, and that is, are we taking that herb in a way that's gonna be effective? Is that herb in the right preparation? Because what you go to an herb store, Alicia, and you go to Cola, you're gonna see it in a tincture, capsules, loose leaf tea, powders, extracts. I'm sure there's more I'm not even thinking of right now, but that's confusing as a consumer.
I think that this is probably the biggest issue. I think it's the most problematic, the preparation. Because yeah, that's why I think preparations we can do pills, like whether it's a tablet or a capsule. We could do a tincture, whether it's a tincture with glycerin or with alcohol or both. We can do a tea, and then there's extracts, and which like what is a tincture? I think some people listening might not know what a tincture is.
Yeah, let's take a moment and define it.
So I'll say what it isn't. A tincture is not a super concentrated herbal medicine. Tinctures are an extract that have been made. I mean, this is really like folk herbalism continuing on, would you say?
Yes, I think there's been a lot of scientific validation behind the tinctures, and we've done a lot to make sure that well, it's so vast, right? Like some schools are using tinctures in one way that are, more scientific based, and we know we're extracting the active constituents, and other people are using them in a more folk method, which kind of just actually muddles and complicates the entire wrong preparation method. Because even if the tincture is an appropriate vehicle for the herb you're taking, if it's not tinctured right, we're still in the wrong preparation method. So that's actually a can of worms, Alicia.
Okay, well, I'll say this for consumers, for people who are herb curious, a tincture, those are the drops. When you go down the aisle that has the herbs and supplements, the little tiny bottles, they're usually in little blue bottles or little black bottles, and they have a little dropper on them, like you would have in some eye drops. And the label will say echinacea, or it will say the name of the herb. And when you turn it over, it has ingredients in it, and the ingredients are going to be the plant material. It's going to usually be a certain percentage of alcohol by volume. Sometimes it's got some glycerin in it. They have alcohol-free tinctures, which are called glycerites, where instead of soaking it in alcohol, they soak it in glycerin. Sometimes there's some acid added to the solution. And what they do is you take plant material, you put it in a container, some kind of a container, and you pour the menstruum. The menstruum is the liquid, whether it's alcohol or glycerin, or alcohol and water, or alcohol and acid, or alcohol and glycerin. You put the menstruum over the plant matter and you let it sit and macerate. You let it sit for a period of time. And then eventually you strain the plant matter out, and the menstruum, that liquid, whatever it's made out of, has some of the constituents of the plant in it. Is that a good explanation?
Yeah, absolutely. And so now we know what a tincture is. So if you're told to go take an herb, it's
Mhm.
it's really important to know that certain preparations of that herb are inappropriate, right? And I think a tincture is a really good example. And I'm gonna have to cite our favorite herb, like ashwagandha, for instance. That's a really good example of an herb that shouldn't be made into a tincture because the tincturing process, the menstruums, this extraction methodology doesn't work to get the active constituents out of the plant. So when we're left with, this product at the end of the day, it might not actually have the active constituents that do the things in the body to make it work and be effective. And that's, I think, the whole issue right there is we are using the wrong plants in the wrong ways and people have no idea what's what.
Well, I think a good example for a tincture would be astragalus. It's filled with polysaccharides. That's one of the reasons this works. Polysaccharides are fabulously soluble in water. Makes a great tea. Astragalus tea tastes good. It's got a mild flavor. It's highly effective. It's great for the immune system, but there's no reason to soak it in alcohol. And then there's ashwagandha, the oh, hi, Boudreaux. Boudreaux, go on. Go on. Go on. I feel like I should look that up. But the active constituents are not soluble in water.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
there's a lot of tea preparations that I see, like turmeric tea. Curcumin is not water soluble.
Yes.
Curcumin is the constituent in turmeric that all the great science has been done on. It's got a vast array of benefits across all the body systems. But if you make turmeric tea, you might as well just open the tea bag and pour it in the trash and have yourself a nice cup of hot water.
Hey, it's still a tasty beverage.
Hey, it's a lifestyle beverage. It's a lifestyle
Lifestyle
beverage.
beverage.
Do you think turmeric's tasty?
Well, you can make into like a golden milk latte or something. And I know you usually use the powder, but I've done it with the root and you can still make a tasty beverage out of it.
Well, and with the golden milk, it is slightly fat soluble.
Yeah.
So, I
But you're
mean,
using
that
the whole powder. Like you were when you do the most golden milk lattes, like it is turmeric powder. You're literally ingesting the powder at the end of the day.
you're ingesting it.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah, exactly.
And I think like we could probably talk about the wrong preparation methods and get really, really nerdy on this topic because it's such a pain point in the profession. But when you go to the grocery store, you know, I hate to say it, but companies are there to sell products. They are at the end of the day, their goal is to take this thing and make it known and given to the public. They're not necessarily making sure that it's effective or it works. And so we see the wrong herbs being used in tinctures, or we see the wrong parts of the herbs being used, when medicinally and traditionally we've only used the root. Some companies are all of a sudden powdering and encapsulating the leaves, right? And so we think we're taking this herb in one form, but we're taking it in this other form that really doesn't have any validation behind it. So this topic, it's really messy and it's really hard and confusing to know as a consumer what you're getting. Is it the right herb in the right format that's going to act in your body? Is it the right part of the plant? Is it an extract that was extracted in a method that's going to work? It gets really overwhelming.
It's yeah. There's. I mean, we could talk for an hour and like nerd out on this for and if anybody wants us to do that, please drop a comment, send us an email. We would love to do that, but we don't want to. I don't want to bore people. That's or get too far over anyone's head. But yes, I mean, are you getting the right part of the plant? And different plants do different things. Different parts do different things. Dandelion. We talked about dandelion earlier. Dandelion leaf, powerful diuretic. That means it makes you pee. And there are reasons why you would need a diuretic. You've got a UTI, you need to flush out that bacteria. you're holding too much fluid, you've got some edema, you're trying to lower your blood pressure. The more you urinate, the better. Dandelion leaf, fabulous for that. The dandelion root is fantastic for all kinds of things, including like cleansing your lymphatic system. And it's known to be a fantastic remedy for breast health. So, if you're having issues with your or concerns about your breast health, and somebody says dandelion, you hear about dandelion on Instagram, and you go and you start eating a bunch of dandelion leaves, and you wonder why you're peeing all the time. It's because it's the wrong preparation. It's the wrong part of the plant. What did
Yeah.
you see this weekend that had us curious?
Oh, the, poppy, it was poppy leaves. It's dried poppy leaves, and, when we use poppy, we use seeds, right? We use poppy seeds as an analgesic, as a sedative, for pain, for insomnia, for all these things, and so I was at an herb store, and I see the poppy in leaves, and I was, like, racking my brain because somebody who doesn't know better would go in thinking they're getting this herb that's going to do these things, but they're getting the wrong part of the herb, and it's going to be maybe not effective.
I'm like, I've never heard of that. I'm looking up uses of poppy leaves. The leaves are less potent than the latex extracted from the seed pods.
Well, and the seed pods are already a very mild medicine at that point,
Hmm.
so using the leaves, I'd have to imagine, like, have to be using a lot to get anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm a big believer in finding, what was it? Was Edgar Allan Poe? Was it Edgar Allan Poe or Mark Twain? I think that said when you're writing, there's only one word that is the best word to say what it is you mean to say. Like for the most effect, there's the most potent thing. And when I'm using plants or supplements, I want the most effect. And there are a bunch of different herbs that do 30 different things, but there's one plant that does that thing better than anything else for the individual.
Mhm,
And, choosing the bottom line is when you have the wrong preparation, whether it's a tincture when you should be using a tea, or a tea when you should be using the whole herb, or the wrong part of the plant, it's the leaves when you should be using the root, or the root when you should be using the leaves, you can get ineffective results,
mhm.
or you can get results that you don't want. Like, I don't want a diuretic when I'm trying to support the health of my breast. Do you?
Not specifically. Enough as is. Yeah. Well, and I think all this just to there's one more point we're gonna touch on, but just to bring it back to what we're talking about here is it's really important to know and understand these things because as we want to use herbal medicine, we want it to be effective for people. And when people go and they use the wrong herb in the wrong way at the wrong dose, then it's really often to say herbalism is ineffective, it doesn't work, I tried it, but really, the circumstances weren't ripe for success. And that's because I think we've made herbalism seem like this very simple system, but underneath it, it is so vast and complex, which I think we bring up every episode, but it really is a very complicated and nuanced system, which brings us into our fifth point, and that is we see people trying to treat very complex issues with herbs in a, for lack of a better way, an unsophisticated approach. I don't know how to say that better.
Well, I mean, yeah, oh, okay, so my husband's really handy. Okay. He's really like he's just a handyman. Okay. Like the coffee maker stops working. He goes out in the garage. He does something. He comes back in, the coffee maker works. He can there's a lot of things around our house that he can just fix on his own. He has a toolbox and he can rewire stuff and he can do things. But when all the lights outside of our house stopped working, we called the electrician. Some things are too complex and we have to call in the professional. And I think it's the same thing. There's a lot of information that can be picked up, that can be learned about in books and learned about on the internet if you know where to go to get good information. But at a certain point, some issues are too complex, have too many nuances for one person who to try and do on their own. And then we have also talked about self-treatment of complex issues, right? Like if I have a complex issue, if I catch a cold, I take care of myself.
Mhm.
I don't go see my herbalist or my doctor. when I have a cold. I don't go and see the chiropractor when I just get I have one of my hips will kind of like compress a little bit. I can work that out myself. But if I have a rib out of place or a disc out of place, I go see the chiropractor. And if I get when the last time I was really sick, I had mastitis. And when I have mastitis, I go and see an herbalist. I need somebody else's eyes on it. I need somebody with a non-biased, objective view who has some tools in their toolkit that I don't have.
Yeah, and I think that there's a big difference between what I'm going to call self-limiting conditions, things that naturally progress and work themselves out, like colds and coughs, flus, things like that, and things that are really complex that have multiple roots and causes in the body. You know, we're talking about your chronic fatigue, your hormonal imbalances, your diabetes, your arthritis, these things that took years to come to happen that are complex. There's a lot of systems that need support and a lot of things that need to be brought into balance, and it's just unfortunately never going to be as simple as reading a an article in a book and picking up that herb. I think that there's just so much more nuance that goes into correcting and rebalancing really complex issues.
Mhm. Yeah. And I mean, what we don't think about we brought up the acne earlier. You see acne or any kind of inflammatory skin condition, like, it just looks like a problem with the skin. But you and I know that there's a whole like, by the time your skin is getting red and inflamed, there's a whole lot more going on. There are other systems that need support. And, when somebody comes to me with extreme anxiety and I start talking to them about their bowel movements, they think I'm just a weirdo. But the two things are intimately connected. And that's not something that ever crossed my mind before I began to really delve deep and study this stuff.
Yep, because not only are the herbs complex, the body is also complex and very intertwined. And I think it takes a good understanding of all of the things to really help support them properly.
Making me think of, and one of the reasons, how do I put this? I'm thinking of a story that it wasn't Michael Tierra, it was one of his students. And the guy told a story about working in an herb shop and having an idea of the energetics. And that there was a man that was coming in and he said he could just see that the guy was super young. He had a lot of yang in his body. He was very hot and he was fatigued, right? So he just kept coming back to the herb store to buy ginseng, and he's getting Korean red ginseng, which increases the body's yang. And he said every month he'd come back and he'd buy more ginseng. And every time I saw him, like, he was just redder and redder. And the guy just kept buying the ginseng because he was still fatigued and he needed the ginseng to get up and go. And that he was needing more and more over time. And that he was looking at him, and he said he could just tell by looking at him that the guy's problem wasn't that he needed a stimulant. He didn't need something to tone his adrenal glands or give him some get up and go. He needed to cool himself down and calm down so that he actually was able to get rest, because we get stronger when we rest.
Mhm.
And, that if you're, you know, if you don't have an objective view or you don't have the expertise, you can exacerbate a problem by trying to treat yourself. With a complex issue or even with something so simple as like, man, I'm fatigued.
Yeah, I mean, think about
It's chronic. Fatigue can be chronic.
and I think that's one of the most common issues we probably see. But I just think of you said that, and like even something as like consuming large amounts of garlic, like can tip your body more out of balance. And I think that it even gets murkier where, yeah, we think we're doing things that are really healthy and good for our body, but if we don't consider the individual and the nuance of the situation, that thing can cause more inflammation, right? That
Right.
we
Or
wouldn't expect.
I'm thinking about a woman that I just saw this weekend, and she's probably listening, she'll know I'm talking about her, but she loves peppers. She loves chilies, and she, like, cuts up chilies and puts them on the side and has chilies with every meal, and chilies are really good for you. They're high in vitamin C, they increase your circulation, but she's starting to have some issues that I believe are due to excess consumption of these hot foods. And it seems contradictory, like, "What do you mean I can't eat my" you know, my healthy chilies because it's not like she's having heartburn or indigestion. That we think, oh, maybe too much hot stuff, but she's having some other problems that excess consumption of any taste, any flavor can begin to throw things out of balance.
Yeah, and you and I mean, this is diverging from herbs a little bit, but you and I have been talking about how we can't tolerate raw foods in the winter, right? Like, our
Mhm.
bodies don't do well with things like salads and raw carrots in the wintertime, and, a lot of people think like, "Oh, that's healthy food, that's good for you," but again, we're all so individualized, we're all dealing with different things, and anything that we eat or ingest or take has the ability to influence our systems for better or for worse.
Yeah. I mean, this is what it means to have a holistic view. We're looking at the whole thing and not just the whole body, but I am a whole body that's existing in a space and time. So right now it is winter time in Houston, Texas. I have to take these things into consideration. I have to take into consideration that I live in a very busy city. I'm affected by all of these things, and I can take that into consideration with what I eat, what I take. My supplements change with the seasons, my diet changes with the seasons because I'm taking a holistic view of things. And, I've struggled with chronic fatigue, and the things that I might take to support my body with that problem is going to change as time and space changes.
Because our health is dynamic.
And it's all connected. So let's see where are we at. We have, I think that, like, to sum things up, it hurts my feelings. It really just breaks my heart when people tell me I've tried herbal medicine, but it didn't work for me. Because so if nobody gets anything else, if you get one thing out of this episode, I want it to be that herbal medicine is effective and it can be effective for anyone, but it requires patience, knowledge, and the correct approach.
Agreed. I keep going, back to a quote from our mentor recently that herbs are dramatic, dynamic, and effective when used properly. When used improperly, you're not gonna see the benefits, and so I think it's really important to start talking about why people might not be seeing the benefits of this beautiful, medicine that's out there.
Yeah. And if you have a complicated issue, seek some guidance because you can get more predictable results with your remedies or whatever your remedies, your supplements, your treatments, whatever you want to call it, if you have more understanding. And there are some great resources out there, but we continue to go back to this. Be selective with where you're getting your information.
Yes. Yes, it's a rabbit hole, and we'll definitely keep exploring all of these topics to hopefully help people build their resource toolbox and figure out how to get effective information out there in the world.
Oh, and let us know. Have you tried herbal medicine? Did it work for you? Did it not work for you? What worked? What didn't? Do you have any specific questions? You can reach out to us. You've got our emails, you've got our websites. We're all on Instagram, and we want to hear what you guys think.
Yeah. Well, I think that sums up today's episode. Alicia, thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here. Good talk.
Yeah, yeah. All right, we'll see everyone next time.
Bye.